Great. Time for me to shut up and pass you over to Mr. Powis. Dave Powis, over to you.
Thank you very much, Syed. Hi, everyone, and thanks for giving me the time to present this retrofitting heat pumps in community buildings study that I'm sure you've all been waiting for with bated breath after the tantalizing teaser that I gave at the November community energy meeting. Hopefully not too much duplication, some updates, some refinements, still not a lot of support for air source heat pumps coming, but you know, we can hope. So I'm going to run through the highlights of the study before its official launch, which will be, I don't know, in the coming days. And then we'll share the study on our resources page of Community Energy London and push it out via all the social media links that we've got. Okay, next slide, please. So the purpose of the study was to identify the potential for retrofitting air source heat pumps in community buildings. We had that wonderful session by Tim on the potential for heat and solar in London. So you'll recognize that map on the right-hand side, which might have been an early version of it. And really, as we've demonstrated at the APPG, the event there, the potential is huge. We've got almost 15,000 community arts and leisure buildings in Greater London. That's 8% of the heat demand for London's non-domestic buildings. Now, 95% of community arts and leisure's heat demand is used for space heating. So you probably get where I'm going here. Swapping out a gas boiler that is using 95% for heating with an air source heat pump makes good sense, especially if 70% of the buildings use gas for space heating. In summary, loads of potential to decarbonise the heating for community buildings within Greater London. Next slide, please. Mona Khalili from Power Up North London, who I'm sure some of you know well, helped with the study looking at the data from UKPN and the GLA and various reports. We've broken it down into categories and subcategory levels, and this slide shows you the mixture by number of buildings, of category types, subcategory types, the total floor area, and the initial heating demand. So from this, you can make various deductions as to where you might want to focus your energy as a community group to help them develop their air source heat pump projects. The first pie shows lots of leisure centres, lots of clubs, places of worship. Excuse me 1 minute. Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Small child coming in. So you can see the floor area isn't necessarily linked to the stock number of buildings and the heating demand. So it might be that the theatres and concert halls and museums, which have a small number of buildings, have a larger heat demand, so you could focus on those. Or it might be that the leisure centres who have a large heating demand, perhaps from their swimming pools, are the ones to focus on. Again, loads of potential across lots of different categories that you might already be working with on solar, or you might have relationships with today. Next slide, please. Challenges, always challenges. So the community energy group or family are very well versed in solar projects. Solar projects we are good at delivering. There was a business model that was very favourable with a feed-in tariff. There is still a business model, and there's loads of great groups out there doing solar. Challenges for air source heat pump or decarbonising heat is that it's quite different. There's quite a lot of skills and knowledge that is not yet developed, mainly because there are hardly any air source heat pump retrofit projects out there to go and quiz to find out what's going on. It's quite technical, so you need to understand how a building performs. There's a lot of building physics involved, And so in order to deliver a project, there are not that many groups with the experience to pass on. Second big challenge is the agency. And we've probably come across this a few times with multiple stakeholders, whether it's the owner of a property, someone signing off a lease, a board not having the same priorities and motivations as those that use the building, planning permission when it comes to conservation areas, listed buildings and the likes. With air source heat pumps, again, there isn't any permitted development for putting an air source heat pump on your site, so you will need planning permission. Next one, technical challenges. There needs to be a fabric first approach to retrofitting a heat pump. You can put a heat pump in anything, in any building, but it will not be economical if you put it in a building that doesn't first have a well-insulated envelope, well ventilated. So I think a fabric first consideration to all of these projects is necessary, which adds an extra hurdle because you need to get in professionals to do an assessment of the condition, heat loss calculations, for example. I won't talk too much about supply chain, only to note that with a lack of demand comes a lack of expert contractors and installers, and finding quotes to get work done is not quite solar at the moment, where there's too much demand for those that can do it. I think there's not enough demand at the moment for those that can do the assessment and installation of air source heat pumps. So supply chain is a challenge. It will come, but it's slow in coming. Next couple of points, physical and financial. We've got two key issues to overcome, I think, especially in London on air source heat pumps. One of them is the sound, and the other one is the visual or the location of the heat pump. In terms of permitted development or planning permission, whichever way you go, you will not get approval if it's slapped in front of the community energy building. It needs to be less conspicuous. And currently it also needs to be within 1 meter of a boundary of next door, which makes it rather difficult. There's also sound levels. So if you're doing a project, I think Tanuja's on the call, yes she is, the Caxton House project, which is one of the case studies we used, you'll need to do an acoustic report, which is something else that you might not have planned for at the start of your project. Financially, there isn't a business model. As I said before, it's not a traditional raise money through a community share offer, lease some land, pay back the shareholders, and then there's some money in the pot. I think it needs to be looked at in quite a different way, in the sense that there's a lot of co-benefits that are real benefits to the building and the community that aren't necessarily obvious in terms of a financial payback. So it might be that a community energy group doesn't go in and own the asset and then pass it on or sell it at the end. It might be the community group helps them purchase it in the first place. Should we move on? Next slide. How am I doing for time? Am I half or beyond?
You're all good.
All good. Excellent. Opportunities, not solutions, because I haven't got solutions, but got opportunities to overcome the barriers. There's a great potential, I think, at the moment to focus on heat, to focus on developments of decarbonisation, climate change projects, energy projects, more on the demand side than the supply side. And what I mean by that is the grid has decarbonised, and let's hope it continues to decarbonise, and let's hope we can bring more solar on opportunities on. But the focus for quite a few grants and funds, and maybe corporates as well, is on heat and is on reducing demand and energy efficiency. So I think we could be, let's hope, at the start of opportunities in terms of funding and support and more skills and knowledge and experience through the groups. So that's my headline. I feel like we're close. In terms of breaking down or countering those challenges that I highlighted earlier, I've tried to align some of these opportunities to them to say, look, yeah, they are barriers and it has put us off doing projects like this in the past, but there are and there continue to be opportunities. So the skills and knowledge is what we're doing now. We're sharing skills and knowledge. The report shares skills and knowledge. The case studies we do, the LSEF bids, hopefully that have included air source heat pumps in them, will be successful, and we can share progress on them. We can share it through Community Energy England. Duncan's on our call every month. We've got opportunities for webinars and training. I think that is really key and important to have that kind of, I'm not doing it on my own. This is how we've approached it, and the network. So this is what we're talking about, the network. On agency, recommendation would be find your internal champion that drives you through, and make sure that it's always on the agenda for the decision makers at board level, at owner level, planning, whatever you have, is really key. A community consultation. So we've all heard about doing with, not to, the Skidmore report talking about turbocharging community. It's about talking to the community on what you're doing to their building, the users of that building, whether they're pupils or a congregation or swimmers or what have you. So they understand what's going on, and they can probably take some of that lessons home. And certainly that's my hope. Visiting the sites. So yeah, air source heat pumps might be a bit noisy, but go and listen to one. You might be surprised. They might not be that noisy, especially in London with all the other background noise. Go and feel what they're like, feel the fabric inside the building, feel the low, slow heat, the fact that it's a pleasant environment to be in. Talking of background noise, is someone go on mute? Thanks. And agency, SPG is SPG, special planning guidance, previous applications. So don't go at it afresh. There are planning applications that have got through, and there are little tick boxes or things that you can put in your application to ensure it's successful without having to reinvent the wheel. So certain councils will have a precedent towards supporting low carbon heat. Leverage on that if you're in that council. If not, look for previous applications. If you've got a technical issue, if the building is just too vast and too inappropriate to improve its fabric, for example, you could consider a hybrid pump. So run an existing gas boiler maybe for peaking load and have a low and slow for the rest of the year. Develop your in-house skills, have a clear scope of work. These are technical, so understanding exactly what you're asking your installer to do, or when you're at feasibility stage, understanding the information that you're getting back from the consultant and really challenging them, and make sure you're dealing as best you can with those that are accredited. So MCS is the micro generation certification scheme that works for domestic. Trustmark works for domestic. These two arguably could also work for larger scale non-domestic. Physical, quite obviously, you could just try and place your air source heat pump a long way away from others and use some pipe work, but that might not be possible, might be too expensive. You could try and position it away from inhabited rooms. Again, it's difficult in London, isn't it? Everything's on top of each other. So there are heat pumps that are quieter, they might cost more. There are different designers have different types. So try not to be well, try and figure out which one is most appropriate for your project if you can't position it away from an inhabited space. And on the financial, what I've said here is sequence with an RMI. That's a routine maintenance schedule. Understand your building. Are they doing something already? Have they got some building works in the pipeline? Have they got a grant for something else already? Combine it with something that has more of a business, a shorter return on investment. So solar at the moment is attractive, as we know. An LED audit, if the lighting is out of date or it has a heavy running pattern. Cooling, as we're getting hotter summers, it might be that you have air cooling as well. A couple of others there. Heat as a service could be a business model going forward, but as I said, I'd recommend keeping things simple for now, and there may be some opportunity if there's if the government moves some of the renewable taxes from electricity onto gas. Next slide, please, because I think I've spoken more at length than I intended to on those. So the findings are, there's not a lot of experience and not many have been done. There's no support. I mean, this is the key, isn't it? There's no support from the government for any air source heat pump retrofit above 45 kilowatt capacity. The 3 case studies that we used for this report, all of them were over 45. So that's the first thing. There's no renewable heat incentive for non-domestic. You know, I could go on. We have a crucial part to play in facilitating the projects. The community buildings that I've spoken to on behalf of HEAL when we were going for the Hackney Community Fund needed the guidance. They needed someone to trust. They didn't know where to start necessarily. Some will be more advanced than others, but we've got that role to play in as the trusted intermediary. It's complicated, but you know, we've done worse. I mean, we've tackled harder. I mean, not done worse. So next slide, please. It's because Alex was waving at me like this. Ah. So recommendations in the report, we've grouped them towards community groups. Now, these could be community energy groups or community groups in the general sense of those that are in our community and already connected. Local authorities, as we know, as we heard earlier, there's a huge amount of interest in combining their goals with our goals. And central government, well, you've always got to shout at central government. You never know what might happen, eh? So let's move on to the first of the 3, which I think is community groups. Or the next slide, whatever that is. Yes, here we are. As I said before, skills and knowledge, upskill the community group members first in the technology. So we can do that through learning, webinars, understanding Fabric First Retrofit generally. Share the best practice, as we've said, arrange site visits, collaborate on projects, partner with the council. That's what we're seeing earlier. Form a close relationship with your local authority. Put your arm around them and say, look, we know it's hard, but we can do it. We can offer you our expertise and we can go and engage with the community. We can help you, and they'll jump at it, I'm sure. Financing, as I said, I haven't got a solution for that, but it's just recognizing we've got to think differently. It's the business model for PV isn't transferable here. It will need funding. It will need grants at this point. So just bear that in mind. And the lobbying, let's help DESNZ. Let's give it a direction for the option, how it can give us those subsidies, how it can give us those grants directed to us helping. Next slide, please. So recommendations for local authorities: awareness within your constituency, I suppose. Deliver those demonstrator projects and engagement initiatives. So open them up, open the houses up, get people along in the community buildings, preferably not just residential homes. And provide the confidence in these these new pieces of technology, partner and procure the services of community groups, not just expect them for free, to identify and develop these projects. Planning, special planning guidance that I said earlier, and fast track applications for heat pumps in community buildings. And what I mean by that is make sure everyone in each department understands that this complements the climate emergency declarations and plans that the council has made. So it needs to be in harmony with housing, with energy and environment, with the various departments saying go tick, tick, tick straight through. Funding, local authorities can utilise in London the carbon offset funds to support us, the retrofit, and through LSEF, as we've said before, that needs to continue to happen and have again a positive precedent for projects that deliver decarbonisation of heat. And it might be a long thing, might be a long-term engagement. It's not just bang, bang, bang. And on education across those teams, so educate the teams in what it is. What is a heat pump? It's not an air conditioning unit. It's, you need to have an appreciation within the council. Last slide, I think, would be the central government recommendations. So I've just seen them extend the boiler upgrade scheme, which is great in terms of its duration. Now I would ask, let's increase the capacity. So at the moment it's a 45 kilowatt max. Let's increase that to 100. That would have coped with those 3 case studies that I've said. They would have got some £5,000 funding to swap out the gas boiler for an air source heat pump. Replace the non-domestic RHI with something else, or create a new community energy fund. In fact, do all of that, please. And then support the UK Infrastructure Bank in providing loans to top up those grants and subsidies. Local area energy plans are great. Let's have more of those. Unlock the potential for local authorities to work with community groups in a very targeted way. So new funding opportunities should say, look, if you work with your community groups, here's some funding. So actively facilitate local authorities transferring those funds and working together with community groups. Admin, Green Homes Grant, voucher scheme, I don't need to say anymore. The time that is taken, the criteria, the process for a lot of these grants, the working capital, I mentioned it earlier today as well. New groups don't have it. It's no good giving us the money right at the end. Reporting on evaluation, monitoring and evaluation, all needs to be streamlined, and then we're happy. Planning at a national scale, the national planning framework needs to include air source heat pumps within permitted development. Remove the ludicrous boundary 1 meter thing, make it 5 meters, just not 5 meters, 0 meters is what I mean. Because I think it's outdated, it's not helping at all. And standards, EPC, some community buildings need an EPC, some need a display energy certificate, but EPCs are massively out of date in terms of what they're based on. They're based on a cost metric, not a carbon one. So sometimes you put an air source heat pump in and you'll reduce your score, which seems ridiculous. So that needs overhauling, along with the SAP costs in there. So electricity and gas costs are well out of date. And MEES is minimum energy efficiency standard. That just needs to be implemented and enforced to try and get some more investment in stock. I think that's it. So thank you very much for listening to that. The big report, which is chocker full of more guidance and observations from the case studies. So thanks to Tanuja, Power Up North London, Toby from Crew, Gus from One Stone Grove, the case studies that are in the appendix to this report. We have another, I think, another part of the report that just pulls out the suggestions for community energy groups. So within the report, I've got some I've expanded on those opportunities. So if you just want to get to that stuff and not look at all of the challenges, you can, or you can pick it apart and mix and match. So please have a read of it, and let's keep it live. It'll be on the resources. Hopefully there'll be some air source heat projects going through, hopefully one that Heel's doing, and we'll feed in all of our knowledge to that. And I look forward to seeing some and visiting some.
Thanks, Dave.
Thanks.
This was a bit of a labour of love. Just to saying, I mean, there's an awful lot of heat pumps reports out there. This is the report actually, as Dave's pointed out, tries to estimate how many buildings could benefit from air source heat pumps in the community building sector, as Dave mentions, and that primer on things that that community groups would need to look out for if they're going with an air source heat pump project. We also kind of just reflected as well, there are air source heat pumps of the size that we're looking at regularly being introduced in London now, because they're getting money from the public sector decarbonisation scheme. So they're heat pumps going in leisure centres, schools, lots of other council buildings, because they're getting a massive grant from government through the PSDS. Community groups, of course, however, do not benefit from that. Okay, Giovanni, you've got your hand up. I think it might be reflecting your question in the chat about a financial model. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. So I was looking at a leisure centre, and I did build a financial model, but I wasn't very confident on it because it's so marginal. I mean, the business case is so marginal, and very much dependent on your view of future price fluctuations. Simply because, yes, the air source heat pump does use quite a lot of electricity, certainly leisure centre sized. And so it's whether it's financially advantageous for the site really does depend on your view, what, so you need quite a clever financial model that's going to not only build in all the variations you could possibly have with a air source heat pump versus ground source or ground source heat pump. You need to build in that risk or the ability to assess that risk. So does anyone know, is there one about, has anyone built one? Can I have it, please?
Dave?
No, it's like I said, you got to think of it slightly differently. Operationally, it would run at about the same. So with the current gas and electricity prices and the efficiency of an air source heat pump, it would, but you got to pay for the thing in the first place. And if there's no subsidy for it, you're spending tens of thousands. And to recoup that, like you would recoup tens of thousands on a solar, it doesn't work. It's not that much cheaper to run an air source heat pump than run your gas boiler to make that business model. Yeah,
that's what we found in it. And the big problem was the future price thoughts, that actually the site was saying, well, we don't know what's going to happen to the electricity price. If it goes up again, if it spikes again, then that completely wipes out any potential savings. It basically made sense financially. It was about the same cost as the gas with solar powering it during the day. But it was so marginal that really they wanted to know about those risk factors. So I want somebody who's cleverer than me to build me a nice financial model. Please, sending it out there. Here's my ask to the community.
Giovanni, Dave and I spoke about this yesterday, and of course, at the moment, heat pumps are only going in if you get the boiler upgrade scheme, £5,000 grant. So even then, they're only going into the domestic sector once you get a massive bung on either the air source heat pump or £6,000 or whatever it is on the ground source heat pump. And of course, so therefore, you're asking, can we get a model for non-domestic buildings when the equivalent in the domestic sector doesn't work without a massive grant? So what we're saying is, at the moment in time, unless prices come down and also installation costs in terms of better knowledge amongst the sector comes down, it's impossible as far as I can see it. And therefore, we're saying at the moment in the early stages, the only way you can do it is by having something replacing the non-domestic RHI, because that was the only way prior to its closure that you could actually get heat pumps in. You had the non-domestic RHI. And we don't have that equivalent, as Dave was saying there. But you mentioned about the prices. The one thing that the government talked about quite significantly for some time, but the price spike has kind of made them go quiet on it, is the rebalancing of environmental taxes on gas and electricity. So there's lots of environmental taxes on electricity. There are none or hardly any on gas. And there was supposed to be an affordability of energy consultation, which has been pushed into the long grass because of the big price spike we've had since, the whole Russia invaded Ukraine and global gas prices have gone up. So there is that intention to rebalance of prices on gas and electricity on via environmental taxes, but it's been put on hold until you get a bit of that and the prices come down and probably still a grant. It's incredibly difficult. And the one scheme that I went to go and visit down in Catford, which you helped with Celsey, the only way they did it, I think they managed to get 75% of the cost via grant, if I'm right.
Yeah, that's right.
Giovanna.
Yeah,
I mean, they
that's
got
right.
grants from about 4 agencies to make that work. It was not viable at all. It's just because an awful lot of agencies helped in terms of the funding for that. I hope that goes in part way to answer your question. Alex? Oh, Dave, come back to Giovanni if you want to, then Alex. Dave?
Well, it was just, I think because they are very, very subject to volatility, to price volatility, I think we need a financial model there ready to make assessments as, as the sector evolves. So yeah, I'm still putting the answer out there. I realise
Yeah.
that they're not viable now, but we need to be ready for
Yeah.
when
I
something
mean,
changes.
Giovanni, just to say, I mean, if you get an LSEF grant, a carbon offset grant from the local authority, the site gets a bit of a grant as well, you'll be able to make it work. Celsey's decision then is that it might be economically suboptimal otherwise, but if you get vast amounts of grants because they see the environmental benefit of it and they decide to do it that way, your choice about whether or not you want to take it then.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, financial
Okay.
model, please. Anyone who's very, very, very better than me at Excel, please. Thank you.
Can I come back to that?
Go ahead.
Yeah.
I think that's the point. You won't get one, and we need to change our mindset to say that it's not viable. It's the other bits, the co-benefits that people don't put a value on at the moment, or we're uncomfortable with because you can't put it in a spreadsheet. So, for example, the health benefits, the air quality within a community building, the stable heat within the community building, the fact that both those factors will encourage people to use a community building and maybe rent it out a bit more and maybe get more revenue in. And maybe that helps in other ways with the National Health Service burden. All these things that are cited often in terms of improving the fabric of a building and then using a low carbon heat source, one that doesn't, combust in your back room. There's lots of things there that you would then need to put a number on. And I think we do relatively well in putting the social impact number, the social value of an investment. That's the kind of stuff that you would need in that spreadsheet, this elusive spreadsheet that you look for, not just how much is the gas price, how much is the electricity, do I get a subsidy, and how long does it take to pay back that really expensive heat pump that I put in.
It's still a valuable exercise to do, Dave, to find out what the rate of return would need to be. It would be under the current system, and therefore how much level of subsidy you need to make those projects work.
But they're all bespoke. Yeah, I remember at the start of this project side, you said something similar to me. I thought, I'm not putting a number on that because of all the different factors that you need.
Fair enough. Yeah,
in terms of understanding the building physics itself and the heat load and all that before you get them.
No, you were dead right, and you still are. Alex?
Firstly, to respond to this point, couldn't CEE or CEL basically convene a hackathon for interested groups to come up with a kind of generic financial model, and everyone that attends and contributes to said hackathon gets a copy of the financial model that was created? Because you could factor in something to encompass all the different variables. And also, to do this at the moment, we've got things like the booster fund, which will match fund. It's actually changed up to 100 grand on a community share offer, and we can access that because we are, well, most of us are BenComs, community benefit societies. So that actually combined, that will help with the pre-feasibility. Then you could get a bit of LSEF funding. Yes, it's got to be a patchwork of bits and pieces to make this work financially, but that's just the reality and practicality of the current situation. So it is possible. It's just a pain in the butt to do, but we know this because it's community energy, and that's how things usually are, annoyingly.
No, you're quite right, and I think, you know, we may well. I mean, Duncan, one of the things I emailed to you, I think early this week or last week, is that if there are heat pump projects that have gone in from a community energy basis, I'm presuming they would have gone in with support from the Rural Community Energy Fund, because that was the big bung from government. Now, they might not be completely transferable into London-based projects, but in an ideal world, it would be good to have a list of RCEF projects that supported heat pumps. But though you have the map, I can't see a really handy list of what community energy projects under RCEF were supported heat pump projects. One to think
Can I
about.
just come back and say,
Yeah.
Could Community Energy London or England convene a hackathon to come up with such a thing, or is that a totally barking idea?
I think what we could do is, yeah, sorry, Duncan, you answer.
Just to say, we have a heat working group, and that would be the best place to do it. So I'm happy to take that proposal to the heat working group. That's where the expertise is. And anybody who wants to join it, email me. And yeah, we had 30 people at the last one. Happens monthly on a Tuesday morning.
Perfect. Thank you, Duncan. That's great. Alban?
Just a tiny thing on Dave's point about social benefits, air quality, help reduce cost on the NHS and stuff like that. About a decade ago, and it's no more recent than that, the lovely people at New Economics Foundation were getting a lot of traction in the Cabinet Office from their social return on investment work. And they were putting together this kind, attempting to quantify these extremely hard to quantify benefits, such as examples that Dave mentioned. I might be able to look out a source on that. Very old, as I say, you know, kind of late stuff. A very tiny question back to Alex. The booster fund, sorry if I'm showing my ignorance here, but long time away. The booster fund available to BenComs. What's the source for that, Alex?
I put a link to it in the chat, Alban.
Okay.
Is it Co-ops UK?
Sort of.
Okay. Listen, the report, Dave, when are we actually going to get it on the CEL website? Are we nearly there? We're about 98% there. I think we have to give it a cover.
Need a cover, yeah.
And we're there, yeah. I can, Dave's glazing over there, but I promise you all, it's virtually there. It's become a bit of a...
you agreed on the cover.
I think with appendices, I think it's like something like 140 pages, isn't it, or something?
Don't scare people off. It's 50
okay,
pages.
yeah.
Don't tell people that.
CEL, we do proper reports where you know, we look into these things, but importantly, I think what we're going to do is once we get the cover on and we put it in PDF and post it online, we're going to send it to officials at London government and to boroughs and to some researchers and get their feedback, because of course the big issue is that all of the heat pump discussions are effectively about the residential sector, nothing about the tens of thousands of buildings which are non-residential, and they are very important in the decarbonisation agenda, especially in London with its built environment. Dave, thanks for your work there. Dave's been yeah, go ahead, Dave.
I don't know if Tanuja wants to say anything on Caxton House.
Excellent, yeah.
Tanuja, presumably there must have been some kind of business case put forward for Caxton to go for the air source heat pump. That might be interesting just to prod at that whilst we're talking about it.
It wasn't a self-funded business case. The business case was primarily on the environmental benefits. And when we looked at the numbers, especially at the time, there was a massive differential between the gas and electricity price in favor of gas. Our financial calculations showed that absolutely this needed to be grant funded. So that's the route we went down. Ironically, it's changed a little bit since then because now they're paying a lot more for gas than they are for electricity. But we don't know, to Giovanna's point, how long that will last. We don't have a crystal ball. So we could rerun the calculations. It might be interesting from an academic perspective to see what this might mean in the future. But I'm pretty optimistic that heat pump prices are going to come down significantly from where they are now, given the volume of heat pump installations that that have got to go in over the next few years. And also that this differential between gas and electricity prices having reduced significantly, may not go back to where it was before. So I think the financial model is starting to veer in the direction of it becoming affordable. That's my view. And to the extent that I think people might be able to borrow some money to buy and install these applications, a bit like we do with solar panels, and to be able to pay it back from the savings they make from having the heat pump in there. So that's my personal view, but I think that will come to pass over the next few years.
I think you're absolutely right, Tanuja. You can kind of see a kind of sea change in it already at the moment. It's just a matter of time for these projects. Okay, yeah, we'll build upon that. I think what we'll do is once we've published the report, had a bit of a break from it, we may well we'll take a little bit of time off, and then Dave, what we'll do is we'll convene a few people and see where we take that work to next. I think Catherine has a finger in the air, unless she's pointing at something.
I do.
Oh, go ahead, Catherine.
I just wanted to shout out, as you did, but also the work that you've done, Syed, on this report, because it has been an amazing commitment and you've worked wonders, and you never shout out your work either. So I'm doing that. And as I put in the chat, I think Dave, you, Syed, Tanuja, Mona, her calculations are mind-blowing. Tom Luff at the beginning as well. Toby and One Stone Grove as well. So thank you all very much.
That's absolutely right. Thank you for catching me up on that, because it was a big team effort. Mona's not here today. She works on the numbers, and clearly we gave her such a great project that she then got a job at Energy Systems Catapult as an analyst afterwards.
Her brain astounds me.
And Tanuja introduced us to Tom Luff, who was an ex-BEIS official working on the RHI, who did the work for us, and then got a job at Energy Systems Catapult as well. So clearly we're just a launch pad for people to get in amazing jobs.